Here at Northwood called Check-In for Change. Where for every check-in on Facebook, where you just check in and say, I'm here for Christmas Eve service at Northwood, over the course of the season of Advent, we are donating $1 for every check-in to the Methodist Children's Home. This is an organization that historically, like 100 years ago, started off as kind of an orphanage, but they don't really do the orphanage thing anymore. They've expanded into just, it's an incredible organization. Statewide, they've got 3 huge hubs where they primarily provide services for mental health resources for children of all ages. And so there's some kids who stay there for a year, for 6 months. There's some kids who just go there for a short time to have that get the resources that they need after any number of circumstances. Kids who are going through some sort of post-traumatic experience. Really, really fantastic organization. So I should have said that before the offering. If you'd like to make a special offering to the Methodist Children's Home, we'd be happy to take a donation if you write that in the memo of your check. Or again, for every Facebook check-in, we'll donate $1 to the Methodist Children's Home. So this is the 4th Sunday of Advent. This passage that I'm going to read tonight is usually reserved for the first Sunday of Advent, and you'll see why, but it just felt right this year. And so I needed to revisit this. This is Isaiah chapter 11. It's not usually the passage you hear on a Christmas Eve, but it'll all make sense when you hear the word of the Lord tonight. This is Isaiah chapter 11. It says, "A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. On that day the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Now, I've been sharing with you over the past several weeks about some of my family traditions, and I've talked about the nativity scene. I brought my family's nativity scene and shared how special it was to set that up every year. I talked about getting our pictures with Santa, and in my family we have every single year getting our picture with Santa. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and so from before I was born, it's on my mom's piano still, every single year until I finally come along, and then we bring in the significant others who eventually become our spouses, and it's just really neat to see. I've talked about my ornaments in the past. These ornaments that it's kind of fun to go back and look at getting a new ornament every year because you can see what you were interested in that particular year. If I was into soccer, I have a soccer ornament, or I have a snowboarding ornament, or I have a guitar playing ornament for the year I started playing the guitar. Well, there's a couple different traditions that I wanted to talk about tonight. And one of those was that every year, for at least a season of the Fitzpatrick family life, we would go and cut down our own Christmas tree. Anybody do that before? So you go out, and I lived in Northern California. We'd go up into the mountains. There's a mountain range around us, and we would cut down the Christmas tree and load it onto our Volkswagen van again. Now, I am the one on the bottom there. This is my 3 siblings, so my brother Thomas is next in line, and that's my sister Heidi. She's the oldest, and my brother Jonathan is up on top of the van. I mean, we were straight out of the Griswolds. This was like every year we'd go, and my dad would make us go chop down that tree and put it on top of that Volkswagen van again was one-wheel drive. Unbelievable. It was a shoebox on wheels, and somehow we'd put the tree on top of there and pray that we made it home, and then we'd make it home with this big tree and try to find a perfect spot for it in the house. It was a great tradition, though. Another one of our traditions that I absolutely love was this one. This is an Advent calendar that my mom made for all 4 of us kids, handmade this with different little pockets for each day, and she would hand wrap Christmas presents, little trinkets. And so every morning throughout the month of December, it was so exciting to wake up in the morning and go get that present, and we would count our way up to Christmas morning. Now, this one now says Emily because it became Emily's, and my mom made 3 more of them for our other kids. And so now the tradition is passed on. Now they get to go and see what their little trinket is every morning. I'm kind of all over the place today with stoles and Bibles and Advent calendars. I want to talk about one more Advent tradition, if you will, that some families participate in, and that is a Jesse tree. Has anybody participated in having a Jesse tree before? So it's a little less common. A Jesse tree is similar to an Advent calendar. It's a tree that you add something to. People make ornaments, kind of like a Christmas tree, similar ideas. You add ornaments each day in December. Each ornament helps tell the story that leads us to the birth of Jesus, primarily focused on the family tree of Jesus, the, genealogy of Jesus and the stories that take place over time, leading us to the arrival of the Messiah. It's called a Jesse tree. And the reason it's called a Jesse tree is because it comes straight from Isaiah chapter 11. This passage right here, if you'll recall, David's father is Jesse. So when you follow the lineage all the way to the birth of Jesus, it starts with, in some forms of the lineage, the father of King David, Jesse, hence the Jesse tree. Now, I love this passage because of the imagery in it. It is so good. It talks about the anticipation of this one who will come, who will usher in an age of peace. And you see these things that are juxtaposed, these what we might call enemies, things that we would never see getting along together. You have the wolf that lies down with the lamb. You have the leopard that lies down with the goat or the kid, the calf, a baby cow, and a lion, and the fatling that are together. You have a child over the den of a snake. It's basically trying to communicate that the peace that this Messiah will usher in is an age of peace that surpasses all understanding. There's no way those two things could get along. And that's the point. It's to illustrate these extremes and say, even God can do this. And to the people of Israel, to which this prophecy was given, it's saying, not only can God do this, but God will do this. And so this prophecy took on this sense of anticipation. The people of Israel waited for generations, telling their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids that God is faithful. God will do this. Someday, the Messiah will come. And when he comes, this age of peace will be ushered into our present reality. But there's another image in this passage that I really like. And that is the image of the stump. The stump. You have this tree that's been cut down, if you will, and it appears to be completely dead. And then in verse, where is it? I shouldn't have said that because I just set myself up. It talks about the root of Jesse. Verse 10 says that the root of Jesse will spring from below. In other words, you look at a stump and it looks dead and you think there's no hope. And yet, from that stump, God brings new growth. I love this. From a stump, God brings new growth. And that new growth continues to grow and eventually leads us to the birth of the Messiah. The root of Jesse is a prophecy of the Messiah. It's Jesus. You see, we serve a God of redemption and resurrection. A God who promises us that the things we look at and call dead still have potential, still have life. God says, I know you think you've given up on that. It just looks like a stump, but watch me. Watch me. Often, God does what God does best in those times when all we see is a stump that we've already given up on. I think it's one of the reasons I love sports so much is because the story behind them, the narrative of a game that just looks like it's completely done. And somehow in the second half, the underdogs, they come back from being just completely demolished. There's no hope. They could never do that. And they come back and they win the game. And every part of you is celebrating with them because of the underdog story, the story of resurrection, if you will, that plays out sometimes. I always wished I could coach a team like that, where I would be the coach that at halftime I give this just impassioned speech, and the team comes out with a brand new energy, and in the second half they just destroy the other team, and we celebrate together in victory. I actually entered into the world of coaching myself in the year 2020, right when we were coming out of the pandemic. I was asked to be a head coach of the Rainbow Unicorns. Now, the Rainbow Unicorns was the soccer team that our 4-year-old daughter Juliet played on. This was 4- and 5-year-old girl. Here's a little video of what our practices looked like with the Rainbow Unicorns there. It was quite intense. I took the coaching very seriously. I wanted to make sure I did not let them down. So we had high hopes for this season. We weren't very good. We had little glimpses and slivers of hope, if you will, but the first half of almost every soccer game we played, it was like a perfect setup for one of those Hollywood stories of a great comeback. We'd be down by like 10 points after the first half, and I'd get in there and I'd give a speech to the team and say, come on, we got this. And it's usually where the story ended. We never quite got to the second half where you're supposed to come back. And so over the course of the season, we saw our fair share of stumps, if you will. The next season, we were a lot better, right, Juliet? Yeah, we got better the next season. But that first season was a little rough. But if you define success by the score, then yeah, you might see a stump. But for me, that root of new life was seeing the smile on her face, just loving it, having so much fun playing soccer. And I kid you not, this sounds like something a pastor would make up, but I promise you it's not. We got back in the car after one of the games, and Juliet told me, Daddy, no, this was 4-year-old Juliet, Daddy, I feel like God told my heart that he's proud of me, that I played good today. I was like, man, if that doesn't make you feel all the feels, then I don't know what will. Like, yes, that is it. This is what new life is all about. We could define things how we want to and say, that game is just done. I give up. Or we could look for the new life that appears when everybody else has considered it a stump. Think about your own life. Think about this past year, 2023. I would imagine that in January, we all kind of get to start over. You've got some big dreams. This is the year I'm finally going to, whatever, fill in the blank. And at some point along the way, I know because I'm your pastor and I've heard story after story, for many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, it's like life has come with this axe and turned that tree of optimism into a stump. And we step back and we look at it and we go, what happened? What happened? We've all got stumps in our lives in so many different forms and fashions. Things that we could just give up on and say it wasn't supposed to look like that. And Isaiah chapter 11 reminds us of the root of Jesse. That in those times, when we look at life and say, it's over. That's done. I cannot believe I have a stump in my life. God says, watch me. Watch me. This is what Christmas is about. That when God looked at the earth in a time when everybody is saying, what is happening? We could talk about this in 2023, in a time when we look around and say, what is happening? Christmas reminds us that God shows up. that God is a God of resurrection and new life and possibilities out of the things and situations that we often consider dead, the things that we consider stumps. There's no way I could keep going on looking like that. And God says, watch me. Emmanuel, God with us, the arrival of the Prince of Peace that surpasses all understanding, if only we have eyes to see and ears to hear. And so tonight, we get to light the Christ candle as a reminder that the things that we often give up on, God still has plans for. God is with us. Emmanuel. In the person of Jesus, God's perfect future entered into our present reality. The hope, peace, love, and joy we've been discussing and anticipating over the season of Advent all culminates in the birth of the Christ child, God taking on flesh and walking with us to remind us that no matter what your stump looks like, God is a God of resurrection and new life. Amen. Amen.